The wedding day. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the quaint little chapel, nestled in the heart of Maplewood. It was a day that was supposed to mark the beginning of a new chapter, a day of love and celebration. Inside, the atmosphere was electric with excitement. Friends and family gathered, their chatter a melodic backdrop to the pivotal moment that was about to unfold. But among the joyous faces, one stood apart, a small boy with dark curls and worried brown eyes. 8-year-old Ethan Matthews fidgeted nervously with a tiny ring pillow in his hands, the fabric soft against his small palms. His miniature tuxedo, perfectly tailored to match his father's, felt constricting. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, feeling the weight of the day pressing down on him. Although his father, David Matthews, stood at the altar, looking dashing in his crisp black tuxedo, Ethan felt an unsettling knot tighten in his stomach. "Dad, you look great," Ethan whispered, forcing a smile as he looked up at his father. David, with his salt and pepper hair and warm hazel eyes, beamed down at his son. He ruffled Ethan's hair affectionately, a gesture that usually brought comfort. "Thanks, buddy. You're the best ring bearer a dad could ask for," he replied, his eyes sparkling with pride. But beneath the cheerful facade, Ethan harbored an anxiety that belied his age. He had always been a perceptive child, blessed or perhaps burdened with an innate sense of right and wrong. And today, as he watched his father prepare to marry Emily, a woman he had come to know only recently, his instincts screamed at him. Something wasn't right. As the first notes of the wedding march filled the air, the congregation rose to their feet, anticipation hanging thick in the air. Ethan's gaze shifted toward the grand doors at the back of the chapel. His heart raced, not from excitement, but from an inexplicable fear. He felt the small pillow in his hands tighten, his knuckles turning white as he clutched it harder. When the doors finally swung open, revealing Emily, time seemed to stand still. She was stunning, a vision in white lace and silk, with golden hair cascading over her shoulders in soft waves. Her blue eyes sparkled with emotion as she glided down the aisle, each step bringing her closer to David. The joy radiating from his father was palpable, his face lit up with pure adoration. "You look beautiful," David whispered, his voice barely above a whisper as Emily took her place beside him. "I can't wait to start our life together," she replied, her voice a mixture of excitement and trepidation. But as Ethan watched this exchange, a pit formed in his stomach. He couldn't shake the feeling that the woman standing next to his father wasn't who she appeared to be. Memories of their interactions flashed through his mind, the way Emily had smiled at him, how she spoke to him with warmth and affection. But there were also those moments when he caught her off guard, a flicker of something darker hidden behind her bright demeanor. As the officiant began the ceremony, Ethan felt the words wash over him like a heavy fog, his mind racing. He couldn't ignore the nagging thoughts that plagued him. What if his fears were justified? What if his father was about to make the biggest mistake of his life? In the stillness of the chapel, with family and friends all focused on the couple, Ethan's mind whirled with the weight of his revelation. The thought of standing by while his father married someone he felt was untrustworthy was unbearable. With each passing second, his heart pounded louder in his chest. Then, in a moment of courage that surprised even himself, Ethan stepped forward. He felt a strange sense of calm wash over him, mixed with adrenaline. He could no longer stand idly by. "Dad," he called out, his voice breaking through the tranquility of the moment, echoing off the chapel walls. The guests turned to look at him, confusion etched on their faces. David's smile faltered, and he turned to Ethan. A look of surprise and concern spreading across his features. "Ethan, what is it?" he asked, kneeling to meet his son's gaze. "Dad, I need to tell you something about Emily," Ethan declared, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. The weight of his words hung in the air, and the collective gasp from the guests sent shivers down his spine. As silence enveloped the room, Ethan's heart raced. He felt the eyes of the congregation piercing through him, waiting for the truth he was about to reveal. He knew this moment could change everything. It was a leap into the unknown, but it was a leap he had to take. "Emily is hiding something," he continued, his voice rising above the tension. "She's not who she says she is." The gasps grew louder, and the murmurs of disbelief spread like wildfire. David's face turned pale as he processed his son's words. "Ethan, what are you talking about?" he asked, his voice trembling. But Ethan wasn't backing down. He had to protect his father, no matter the cost. "I saw her talking to a man in the park. They were arguing. She looked scared, and then I saw her take something from him." His voice shook with emotion as he recounted the moment that had ignited his fears. David's eyes widened, confusion and hurt flickering across his face. He turned to Emily, who stood there, stunned and pale. The facade she had carefully constructed began to crack under the weight of Ethan's revelation. "Emily, is this true?" David demanded, his voice rising as he struggled to comprehend the unfolding drama. Emily's expression shifted from shock to anger, and for a moment, Ethan saw the mask slip away. How dare you? This is my wedding day, she spat, her voice laced with venom. But even as she spoke, Ethan could see the fear in her eyes. As tension swirled around them, Ethan knew this was just the beginning. He had opened a door to a truth that would unravel the lives of everyone present. And in that moment, David's protective instincts kicked in. "I'm calling 911, he said, pulling out his phone with trembling hands. The guests watched in stunned silence, and Ethan felt a mix of relief and anxiety. What lay ahead was uncertain, but he had made his choice. No matter the consequences, he would stand firm in his belief that love sometimes meant protecting those we cherish, even when it meant facing unimaginable truths. The truth unraveled with the revelation echoing through the chapel. A heavy silence descended over the assembled guests, their eyes darting between Ethan, David, and Emily. The once happy occasion transformed into an arena of uncertainty, where the air was thick with tension and the unexpectedness of truth hung like a dark cloud. David, still processing his son's words, clutched his phone tightly, the device trembling slightly in his hand. "Ethan," David finally said, his voice low and steady despite the chaos around them. "Are you sure about what you saw? Did she really look scared?" Ethan nodded, determination replacing the earlier fear in his eyes. "Yes, Dad. I promise. She was talking to a man, and they looked like they were arguing. I didn't understand everything, but I could tell she was scared." Emily, her composure faltering, stepped forward, her blue eyes pleading. "Ethan, sweetheart, please listen to me. That man was just someone I used to know. It's nothing. I swear. You have to believe me." But her words lacked conviction, and Ethan could sense the cracks in her facade. This wasn't just a simple misunderstanding. There was a deeper story buried beneath her polished exterior. As David continued to scrutinize Emily, he could feel the weight of his son's gaze on him. He knelt down, looking Ethan directly in the eyes. "Thank you for telling me this. You did the right thing. But we need to know exactly what you saw." The small chapel felt stifling as more guests whispered amongst themselves, trying to process what had just unfolded. The wedding that had promised joy now stood on the brink of collapse, and Ethan felt the weight of that truth pressing down on him. "Dad, I don't want to ruin your wedding," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. David shook his head, his expression softening. "You could never ruin anything by speaking the truth, Ethan. You showed more courage than many adults." In that moment, the bond between father and son strengthened, a silent understanding passing between them. David turned back to Emily, who stood before him, her hands trembling. "You need to tell me what's going on," he said, the urgency in his voice unmistakable. Emily took a deep breath, trying to gather herself. I was in a difficult situation a while back. The man you saw me with was part of my past, someone I thought I'd escaped." Her voice trembled, revealing the cracks in her confidence. The chapel door swung open, and the sound of sirens wailed in the distance. David's heart raced as he turned to see a police car pulling up outside. "Is that who I think it is?" Emily said, her eyes widening with fear. David stepped closer to her, his brow furrowed. "What did you get yourself into, Emily? Who was that man?" As the police entered the chapel, the weight of the situation intensified. Officer Collins, a tall man with a serious demeanor, immediately assessed the scene, his eyes flickering from David to Ethan and then to Emily. "We received a call about a potential domestic issue. Is everything all right here?" David nodded, his voice steady. "Not exactly. My son has just revealed something concerning about his future stepmother. We need to know what's going on." Ethan stood beside his father, feeling the rush of adrenaline coursing through him. It was surreal, standing in the middle of what was supposed to be a wedding, now transformed into a potential criminal investigation. Emily's face paled further, and she took a step back, clearly shaken. "It's just a misunderstanding. I swear," she pleaded, but her voice trembled, betraying her fear. Officer Collins studied Emily carefully, taking in her distressed demeanor. "Ma'am, you need to remain calm. We just want to understand the situation." Ethan watched as the officer approached Emily, his presence authoritative yet calm. "Can you tell me about the man your fiancé's son saw you with? Is he a threat to you or your family?" Emily hesitated, her eyes darting between David and Ethan. He was someone I was involved with a long time ago. I thought I was done with him, but he has a way of getting back into my life." David clenched his jaw, frustration boiling beneath the surface. "What do you mean, getting back into your life? Does he pose a danger to you?" To Ethan. Tears welled in Emily's eyes, and for a moment, the strength she had projected wavered. "I didn't want to bring any of this into our lives. I was trying to start fresh," she said, her voice breaking. "I thought if I just ignored him, he would go away. But he found me." Ethan could feel the weight of her confession. His heart raced as he took a small step forward, determined to stand by his father. "If he's dangerous, we can't just let him go," he said, his voice rising with a newfound strength. The officer nodded, taking note of the boy's bravery. "You did the right thing, Ethan. It's important to speak out when something doesn't feel right." Emily looked at Ethan, her expression shifting from fear to a mix of regret and admiration. "I didn't want to put any of this on you. I thought I could handle it," she said softly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. David stepped forward, his tone serious. "Emily, this is no longer just about you. This affects our family, and we need to face it together. If there's a threat, we need to deal with it." The police officer turned to Emily. "We can help you, but you have to be honest with us. If you're in danger, we can take the necessary steps to protect you." The tension hung heavy in the air as Emily took a moment to gather her thoughts. "I didn't want you to see me like this. I wanted to be the perfect bride for you, David. I wanted to start our life without my past haunting us." "Sometimes our past finds a way to catch up with us," David said gently, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "But hiding it doesn't make it go away. We can't move forward without confronting the truth." As the realization settled in, Ethan felt a mix of relief and apprehension. He had acted on his instinct to protect his father, but now he faced the reality of what that meant. Emily's past was darker than he had imagined, and the repercussions were just beginning to unfold. "Can you tell us what he wanted?" Officer Collins pressed, his tone serious yet compassionate. Emily hesitated again, her fingers fidgeting nervously. "He wanted to control me again. He didn't like that I had moved on, that I was happy. He'd been threatening me, and I thought if I ignored him, he would leave me alone. But I was wrong." David's heart sank, a mix of anger and protectiveness coursing through him. "Why didn't you tell me any of this before? We could have faced it together." "I thought I could protect you both by keeping it to myself," Emily said, her voice cracking as tears streamed down her cheeks. In that moment, Ethan felt a sense of empathy for Emily. She was not just a villain in this story. She was a woman grappling with her own demons, afraid of losing everything she had built. Officer Collins nodded, his demeanor shifting as he began to formulate a plan. "We'll need to take your statement, Emily. It's crucial that we protect you from any potential threats." As the officer prepared to interview her, David placed his hand on Ethan's shoulder, drawing him closer. "I'm proud of you, Ethan. You showed real bravery today." "Thanks, Dad," Ethan replied, feeling a swell of pride at his father's words. The next few moments passed in a blur as the police began to gather information. Ethan stood close to David, feeling the bond between them solidify through the shared experience. The uncertainty was still present, but they were facing it together. As the ceremony turned into an unexpected confrontation, Ethan realized that sometimes doing what is right means stepping into uncomfortable situations. This day, which had promised to be filled with love and joy, was now a testament to the power of truth and the bonds of family. And as the first tears fell from Emily's eyes, he understood that the path ahead would not be easy, but together they could confront whatever came next. Confronting the past, the atmosphere in the chapel shifted from one of celebration to that of determination as the police began to take Emily's statement. Ethan felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him, but he was resolute in his belief that he had done the right thing. The guests, once buzzing with excitement, now sat in shocked silence, their faces a blend of confusion and concern. They had gathered to witness a union of love, but instead found themselves caught in a web of hidden truths and past mistakes. David remained close to Ethan, his protective nature evident. He glanced around the room, noting the concerned expressions on their friends' faces. "I never expected any of this," he whispered to Ethan, disbelief evident in his voice. "Me neither, Dad," Ethan replied, his heart racing. "But I felt like I had to say something." Just then, Officer Collins returned, his expression serious yet understanding. "Emily, we need to ensure your safety. You mentioned that this man has been threatening you. Can you tell us more about him? Any details will help us protect you." Emily took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling as she struggled to compose herself. "His name is Marcus. He's someone I tried to leave behind when I moved here. I thought changing my life would help me escape his influence, but he tracked me down. I thought he would just go away if I ignored him, but he kept showing up." David's brow furrowed in concern. "How did he find you?" "He knew some of my old friends from my previous life," she replied, her voice shaking. "At first, it was just random encounters. I thought it was coincidence. But then the messages started, threats about what would happen if I didn't comply with his demands." Ethan listened, feeling a mixture of anger and sadness for the woman who stood before him. The strong, poised bride he had seen moments ago now seemed fragile, and hurt him to see the fear in her eyes. "What kind of demands?" Officer Collins pressed, jotting down notes in his notepad. Emily hesitated, her gaze dropping to the floor. "He wanted me to meet him. He wanted to talk about our past, and he threatened to expose secrets I had worked so hard to bury. He said he wouldn't let me move on, that he would make my life a nightmare if I didn't comply." David's expression hardened. "We need to take this seriously," If he's made threats against you, we can't take any chances. Ethan felt his heart race as he listened to his father's protective tone. This was the man he admired, and he felt proud to stand beside him, even in the face of such uncertainty. Officer Collins nodded in agreement. We'll file a report and take the necessary steps to protect you, Emily. But we need to know everything. If he's dangerous, we might have to escalate this situation. Ethan watched as Emily's expression shifted from fear to defiance. I won't let him control me anymore, she said, her voice gaining strength. I want to take back my life. I deserve to be happy, and I won't let him take that away from me. David smiled at her, impressed by her newfound resolve. That's the spirit, Emily. We'll face this together. But we need to make sure you're safe first. Can you give us a description of Marcus? Anything that might help us track him down. With a newfound determination, Emily began to recount details about Marcus. He's tall, with dark hair and a piercing gaze that makes you feel like he can see right through you. He has a tattoo on his forearm, evil, I think. He used to say it symbolized freedom, but it felt more like a prison to me. As she spoke, Ethan felt a sense of urgency building within him. He could sense that they were entering uncharted territory, a place where courage and truth would be their only guides. I remember the first time I met him, Emily continued, her voice steadying. He was charming and captivating. He swept me off my feet. But as the relationship progressed, I realized that his charm hid a darker side. He could be possessive and controlling, and when I tried to leave him, that's when things escalated. Officer Collins took detailed notes, nodding along. Thank you for sharing this, Emily. It's important that we know everything. We'll do everything we can to protect you from him. Ethan's heart swelled with admiration for Emily. Despite the fear coursing through her veins, she stood tall, willing to confront her past. It reminded him that even in the darkest times, there was a light within those who dared to fight for their freedom. Can you think of any specific incidents that might help us understand the extent of the threat? Officer Collins asked, leaning forward. Emily took a deep breath, her expression shifting to one of sorrow. There was one night when he showed up at my apartment unannounced. I had finally started to feel safe, and then he knocked on my door. I was terrified. I didn't let him in, but he stood there for hours, yelling and threatening to ruin everything I had worked for if I didn't give him another chance. Ethan's hands clenched into fists at his sides. The image of Emily being tormented in her own home fueled his resolve. We have to do something. He can't just keep doing this to you, he said, his voice rising with passion. David placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, proud of his son's commitment to justice. We will do something. We're going to make sure that this man understands that he can't control you anymore, Emily. You're part of our family now, and we protect each other. Tears glistened in Emily's eyes, and she nodded, visibly touched by David's words. Thank you, both of you. I never wanted to involve you in this mess, but I'm grateful for your support. Officer Collins looked at Emily with a mix of empathy and authority. We'll need to contact your old friends who may have any information about Marcus. If he has people watching you, we can't let that happen. Safety is our priority. With the plan forming, the atmosphere in the chapel began to shift again. The initial shock of the revelation slowly gave way to a sense of purpose. Guests whispered among themselves, some still in disbelief, but many were now discussing how they could help Emily and support her. As the officer continued to take Emily's statement, David turned to Ethan, his expression serious yet soft. Ethan, you've shown a lot of bravery today. I know it's been a tough moment, but you've done something important. You stood up for what's right. Ethan felt his chest swell with pride at his father's acknowledgement. I just wanted to protect you, Dad. I didn't want anything bad to happen to us. Sometimes doing the right thing means making hard choices, but you chose to speak up, and that matters more than you know. David smiled warmly, ruffling Ethan's hair affectionately. As the police interview continued, the chapel began to feel like a sanctuary of strength and unity. Each moment brought them closer together as a family, bonded not just by love but by the resolve to face adversity head-on. Eventually, Officer Collins concluded the interview. Thank you for your cooperation, Emily. We'll contact you shortly to discuss the next steps. In the meantime, please make sure you stay somewhere safe. We can arrange for police protection if necessary. Emily nodded, visibly relieved that the truth was finally out in the open. Thank you, officer. I appreciate everything you're doing. As the officer stepped away to make a phone call, David turned to the guests, who had been silently observing the unfolding drama. Thank you all for your understanding and support. We didn't expect our wedding day to take this turn, but your presence here means the world to us. A few friends stepped forward, offering comforting words and gestures of support. We're here for you, Emily, one of them said. You're not alone in this. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him, realizing that they had turned a moment of darkness into one of solidarity and strength. They were surrounded by people who genuinely cared, ready to stand by Emily as she faced the challenges ahead. As the reality of the situation began to sink in, Ethan understood that bravery didn't always mean facing danger head-on. Sometimes it meant standing by those you love and helping them confront their fears. In that moment, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. He would protect his family, no matter what it took, and he would help Emily reclaim her life. The journey ahead would be difficult, but together, they would face it with courage, honesty, and the unwavering bond of family. Preparing for the storm, the days that followed the shocking revelation were filled with tension and uncertainty. Ethan could sense the palpable change in the atmosphere at home. His father, David, was more vigilant than ever, often glancing out the window, scanning the street for any sign of trouble. And Emily, despite her brave front, appeared fragile, as if the weight of her past threatened to crush her. As Emily began to settle into their home, she transformed her room into a sanctuary, a place filled with memories of happier times and aspirations for a brighter future. She decorated it with photographs of joyful moments from vacations, family gatherings, and celebrations, and hung quotes about strength and resilience on the walls. Each day, she fought to reclaim her life, determined not to let Marcus control her any longer. One afternoon, while David was at work and Ethan was finishing his homework, he heard soft music coming from Emily's room. Curiosity piqued, he quietly walked down the hall to listen. A gentle melody floated through the air, and he could hear Emily humming along, her voice filled with a bittersweet longing. It struck him how deeply she felt the situation and how much healing she still needed. Feeling the need to lighten the mood, Ethan knocked softly on her door. "Hey, Emily, do you want to come play a game with me? We could use a distraction." Emily looked up, startled, but her expression quickly softened. "Sure, Ethan. I'd love that. Just give me a moment to finish this song." Ethan smiled, retreating to the living room, where he gathered their favorite board games. A few minutes later, Emily joined him, a hint of her old sparkle returning to her eyes. She had changed from her earlier somber attire into a bright, cheerful t-shirt that read, "Choose Joy," a silent reminder of her commitment to move forward. As they settled down to play, Ethan noticed Emily's gaze wandering to the window. "You okay?" he asked, sensing the tension returning. Emily sighed, a heavy weight settling on her shoulders. "Yeah, it's hard not to worry. I'm still trying to shake off the feeling that Marcus is out there somewhere." Ethan nodded, understanding the fear that lingered behind her brave facade. "Dad's been on the lookout, and we have the police watching out for you, right?" "Right," she said, offering him a small smile. "It's just that I never expected to have to deal with something like this. I thought I could leave my past behind me." "Sometimes the past has a way of catching up," Ethan replied, his youthful wisdom shining through. "But you're not alone anymore. We've got each other, and I think that makes us pretty strong." Emily laughed softly, her heart warming at his words. "You're right. You're a brave little guy, you know that." "I try," he said with a grin as he rolled the dice. "Let's see if I can beat you at this game." As they played, laughter and friendly competition filled the room, slowly washing away the heavy clouds of fear. For a few moments, Emily felt the joy of being part of a family, of being loved and supported. It was a reminder that even in difficult times, happiness could still be found. However, in the back of her mind, the shadow of Marcus loomed. Each evening, as she tucked herself into bed, the reality of her situation returned, stealing away her sleep. She had learned to live in constant vigilance, her instincts heightened. She couldn't shake the feeling that Marcus would attempt to disrupt the new life she was building, and she needed to be prepared. The next day, David decided it was time to take proactive steps. He called a family meeting after dinner, gathering Ethan and Emily in the living room. "I think it's important for us to have a plan in case Marcus shows up again," he began, his tone serious yet comforting. "We need to discuss safety protocols, and I want to make sure both of you feel secure." Ethan nodded, his young face set with determination. "I think we should come up with a code word. If anything feels off, we can say it, and we'll know to get out of the situation." David smiled, proud of Ethan's insight. "That's a great idea. What do you think, Emily? Do you have any suggestions?" Emily considered for a moment, her brow furrowing in concentration. "How about storm? It reminds us to take cover and protect ourselves." "Perfect," David said, pleased with the choice. "From now on, if any of us feels uneasy, we say storm, and we regroup immediately. We'll make sure to stay vigilant together." As the meeting continued, they discussed various scenarios, including how to react if Marcus showed up at their home or attempted to contact Emily. David emphasized the importance of sticking together and communicating openly about their feelings. "Remember, it's okay to feel scared. We can lean on each other." Ethan raised his hand, an expression of thoughtfulness crossing his face. "What if he tries to contact me? I don't want to be scared of him." "Good point," David replied. "If he reaches out to you, it's important to tell me or Emily immediately. You won't be in trouble, you'll just be helping us keep everyone safe." Emily leaned over and squeezed Ethan's hand. "You're doing so well, Ethan. I appreciate your bravery more than you know. You're a true hero." After the meeting, a sense of purpose filled the house. Each member of the family took it upon themselves to reinforce their safety measures. David installed additional locks on the doors and added security cameras around the property, ensuring they had an extra layer of protection. Meanwhile, Emily started to train herself physically. She enrolled in a self-defense class at a local gym, pushing herself beyond her comfort zone. Each lesson helped her reclaim her strength and independence, and she felt more empowered with every move she learned. Ethan would often accompany her, watching with admiration as she practiced punches and defensive techniques. One day after class, they sat in a cafe, sharing hot chocolate and pastries, a small celebration of their progress. "You're getting really good at that," Ethan said, his eyes wide with admiration. "I bet Marcus wouldn't stand a chance against you now." Emily chuckled, grateful for his unwavering support. "Thanks, but I hope I never have to use it. The goal is to prevent any confrontation in the first place. Still, it feels good to know I can defend myself if necessary." Their bond continued to deepen as they shared their fears and dreams. Emily confided in Ethan about her hopes for a brighter future and how she longed to leave the past behind her. "I want to be a role model for you. I want to show you that strength comes from facing our fears, not running away from them," she explained. Ethan listened intently, absorbing every word. "You already are a role model. You're brave and you make me feel brave too." The warmth of their connection strengthened Emily's resolve to move forward, but the lurking fear of Marcus never fully faded. She frequently reminded herself that they were taking steps to be safe. Each day they would take precautions, making sure they were vigilant and prepared for whatever came next. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and pink, Emily felt a strange sensation wash over her. It was a mix of hope and anxiety, a reminder of how far she had come and how much further she had yet to go. As she sat with Ethan and David discussing the plans for their upcoming weekend trip to the lake, she realized that despite the shadow of her past, she was ready to embrace life again. "I want to make new memories," she said softly, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Let's create a beautiful future together, away from all this." David nodded, determination glimmering in his eyes. "Absolutely. We'll make it happen. This family is about love and support, and that's what matters most." Ethan chimed in, his youthful enthusiasm shining through. "And I want to catch the biggest fish ever. It'll be our adventure." As they all shared laughter and dreams of the future, Emily felt a renewed sense of hope fill her heart. She realized that while Marcus's shadow might loom, it wouldn't dictate her life. With her newfound family by her side, she felt ready to face any storm that might come their way. But as the days passed, the truth remained. Marcus was still out there, lurking, and Emily's strength would soon be tested in ways she could never have anticipated. The storm approaches, and the night before their trip to the lake, the air was thick with anticipation and joy. Emily had spent hours preparing a picnic basket filled with freshly made sandwiches, fruits, and treats while David checked and double-checked their car to ensure everything was in order for their weekend getaway. Ethan, bubbling with excitement, raced around the living room, gathering their gear and bouncing from one task to another as if he were a tightly wound spring ready to launch. But despite the upbeat atmosphere, an undercurrent of tension simmered beneath the surface. Every laugh shared and every joke exchanged did little to shake Emily's nagging anxiety. The events of the past few weeks loomed in her mind like a storm cloud threatening to unleash rain at any moment. No matter how hard she tried to stay positive, the gnawing fear that Marcus could still be lurking nearby was unshakable. As they gathered in the living room for a final check, David's keen eyes caught Emily's distant expression. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. He could see the worry etched on her face, a stark contrast to Ethan's vibrant enthusiasm. "Just a bit nervous," Emily admitted, her gaze flickering to the window as if expecting to see a figure outside. "What if he finds out we're gone? What if he tries to reach out while we're away?" Her voice trembled slightly, the vulnerability of her fear breaking through her determined facade. David placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, his grip firm yet gentle. "We've planned for this, Emily. The security system is armed, and I've let the neighbors know to keep an eye out. Plus, we'll have our phones on us at all times. You need to trust that we are doing everything we can to protect you." "I know, but—" she trailed off, looking down at her hands. "What if it's not enough? What if he manages to find a way to disrupt our lives again?" Ethan, overhearing their conversation, paused his racing thoughts and turned to Emily with wide, earnest eyes. "You're not alone, Emily. We're a team, right? If he shows up, we'll tell Dad, and then we'll get help." His confidence momentarily lifted her spirits, and she smiled at him, grateful for his unwavering support. "You're right, Ethan. Together, we can face anything." As they finalized their preparations, the family shared stories of their past lake trips, the fishing adventures, campfire stories, and the joy of roasting marshmallows under the stars. Each memory woven into the fabric of their shared experiences created a sense of unity, reinforcing the bond they had built. Later that evening, after the excitement of packing had subsided, Emily found herself unable to sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts racing like wild horses. The sound of crickets outside and the gentle rustling of leaves filled the air, but her mind was a tumultuous storm. Images of her past floated back. Marcus' angry face, the threats, the fear she had felt when she realized he wouldn't let her go so easily. She had thought leaving him behind would mean freedom, but the reality was proving far more complex. With a heavy sigh, she swung her legs over the side of the bed and decided to pour herself a glass of water. As she made her way to the kitchen, she heard Ethan's soft voice drifting from his room, and she paused outside his door. "You're brave, Emily. I believe in you," he whispered into the night, a mantra he must have repeated to himself as he drifted off to sleep. Tears filled her eyes as she listened. Ethan had become her anchor through the storm of her life. She stepped back into her room, grabbing her phone to check for any missed messages. Seeing none, she reminded herself that the police were still on alert, watching for Marcus's whereabouts. The next morning, they set off for the lake, the sun shining brightly in a clear blue sky. Ethan chattered excitedly in the backseat about all the fish he planned to catch, his innocent exuberance filling the car with warmth and laughter. David drove, a calm presence behind the wheel, while Emily kept her eyes on the scenery flashing by, allowing the beauty of nature to soothe her worries, if only temporarily. As they neared the lake, a lush greenery and sparkling water came into view. Ethan let out a squeal of delight. "Look at that. It's beautiful," he exclaimed, his face lighting up with joy. David smiled in the rearview mirror. "And just wait until we get the boat out on the water. You'll love it." The atmosphere in the car shifted, infused with excitement and anticipation. The troubles of the past seemed to dissolve into the vibrant landscape as they arrived at their destination. They unloaded the car and made their way to their cabin, a cozy structure nestled among the trees with a stunning view of the lake. The sound of water lapping against the shore filled the air, harmonizing with the cheerful songs of birds. After settling in, they quickly changed into their swimsuits and headed to the dock, where the boat awaited them. David taught Ethan how to fish, showing him the ropes, while Emily relaxed nearby, her heart swelling with pride as she watched the two bond over shared laughter and the simple joys of life. "Look, Dad, I caught one," Ethan squealed, pulling a small fish out of the water. His face glowed with achievement, and Emily couldn't help but clap her hands in delight. "That's amazing, buddy. You're a natural," David cheered, snapping a photo of Ethan holding the fish, capturing the moment forever. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over the lake, Emily felt a sense of peace settle over her. For the first time in weeks, she could breathe freely, soaking in the laughter and love that surrounded her. It was a precious reminder of why she had fought so hard to break free from her past. That evening, they built a campfire by the water's edge, roasting marshmallows and telling stories under a blanket of stars. The flickering flames danced in the night air, and Ethan's laughter echoed through the trees, creating a symphony of happiness. But as the night wore on, a chilling feeling crept back into Emily's heart. She found herself glancing at her phone every few minutes, half expecting it to ring or vibrate with a message from Marcus. Each time it didn't, a sense of relief washed over her, but the worry remained. "Are you okay?" David asked softly, noticing her distraction. "You seem a bit lost in thought." Emily sighed, wrapping her arms around her knees as she gazed into the fire. "I'm just worried that he might try to find us. It's hard to relax knowing he's out there." David reached out, taking her hand in his. "You're safe here, Emily. We're together, and we have a plan. Remember our code word, and if anything feels off, we'll act immediately. I won't let him hurt you again." She nodded, comforted by his words. "I know, and I trust you. I just wish I could completely forget about him." The conversation drifted into a comfortable silence, the crackling of the fire filling the void. Ethan, tired from a day of excitement, yawned and leaned against his father, his small form nestled against David's side. As the flames danced and the stars twinkled above them, Emily felt a flicker of hope ignite in her heart. She was ready to confront her past and fight for the future she envisioned, a future filled with love, joy, and freedom. But deep inside, she knew that the storm wasn't over yet. The shadows of her past loomed, waiting for the right moment to strike. And as the night grew darker, she sensed that something was about to happen that would test their resolve like never before. Confrontation and resolution. As the voice on the phone echoed through the boat, the serene beauty of the lake suddenly felt suffocating. David's grip on the phone tightened, his knuckles going pale as he listened to the threats laced in Marcus's tone. Emily's heart raced, a heavy weight settling in her chest. "Marcus," David said, trying to maintain a calm demeanor despite the brewing storm. "You need to leave Emily alone. She's made it clear she wants nothing to do with you." "Does she?" Marcus retorted, a mocking tone coloring his words. "Or is she just hiding behind your back? You think you can keep her safe? I'll always find her. always. Emily's mind spun with fear, memories of Marcus's volatile nature flooding her thoughts. She remembered the way he had controlled her life, the feeling of being trapped in a cycle of fear and manipulation. Yet now, as David's voice filled the air, she also felt a flicker of defiance igniting within her. "Stop it, Marcus. You don't get to threaten us anymore," Emily shouted, taking the phone from David's trembling hands. Her voice rang with a strength she didn't fully feel, but the determination surged forward. "I won't let you intimidate me. I'm done living in fear." "Emily, you're making a mistake," Marcus warned, but his words were met with a resolve that she hadn't possessed before. "You can't just walk away from me. You think you can start over? You'll see. I'll make sure of it." "Enough," David shouted, his voice booming across the still water, surprising both Emily and Ethan. "If you come near us again, I swear I'll call the police. We have every right to protect ourselves from you." With that, David ended the call, his face set in a grim expression. Emily felt a rush of adrenaline and fear wash over her as the reality of Marcus's threat sank in. "What if he shows up?" she whispered, her voice trembling despite her efforts to sound strong. David turned to her, his eyes filled with concern but also determination. "We'll be ready. We have to report this to the police right away. We can't take any chances." Ethan, who had been sitting quietly in the corner of the boat, suddenly spoke up, his small voice filled with conviction. "I'm not scared. We can face him together, right?" Emily looked at her son, his unwavering courage shining brightly. It filled her with hope, reminding her that they were not alone in this fight. "That's right, Ethan. We are a team, and together we can stand strong." As they navigated back to shore, the once peaceful lake felt charged with tension. Emily's heart raced, the uncertainty of what lay ahead looming over them like dark clouds threatening a storm. But she clung to Ethan's words, embracing the idea of teamwork and strength in unity. Once on land, they rushed to their cabin to gather their belongings, and Emily dialed the police. Her heart thudded in her chest as she recounted the threats Marcus had made. The dispatcher assured her that an officer would be sent to the lake immediately, but the waiting felt interminable. While they waited, David worked on fortifying their cabin, checking all the locks and ensuring every window was secured. Emily joined him, her mind racing with possibilities. She wanted to believe that this trip could be the start of something beautiful, a retreat from their troubles. But Marcus's shadow loomed over everything. Hours passed, and the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a pale orange glow across the lake. The family sat around the campfire, the flickering flames providing a small sense of comfort against the encroaching darkness. Ethan roasted marshmallows, his innocence a stark contrast to the fear and uncertainty swirling in Emily's heart. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps approaching broke the silence. Emily's heart leaped into her throat, and she instinctively looked to David, who stood tense and alert, ready to protect them at all costs. They all turned towards the sound, and as the figure came into view, Emily's heart raced, bracing for the worst. It was a police officer, his silhouette outlined against the fading light. "Ms. Scott," he called out, his voice authoritative yet calm. "We received your call about the threats." "Yes," Emily replied, relief flooding her voice as she rushed toward him. "Thank you for coming." "I'm Officer Reynolds," he said, introducing himself as he stepped closer. "Can you tell me exactly what happened?" As Emily explained the threats and the harrowing history with Marcus, she felt the weight of her fear dissipate slightly. The officer listened intently, taking notes, his expression serious and focused. He assured them that they would do everything possible to ensure their safety. "Do you know where Marcus is now?" Officer Reynolds asked, his brows furrowing with concern. "I don't know," Emily replied, her voice shaking. "He could be anywhere, but he's been watching me. He knows we're here." "All right, we'll keep a close watch on the area. I recommend that you stay indoors for the time being and lock all the doors and windows. If you see anything suspicious or hear anything out of the ordinary, call us immediately." As the officer reassured them, David took Emily's hand, squeezing it gently. "We'll get through this together," he whispered, grounding her in the moment. With Officer Reynolds gone, the family huddled together inside the cabin, the night stretching out before them filled with uncertainty. They set up a makeshift sleeping arrangement in the living room, wanting to remain close to one another. The cabin, once filled with the sounds of laughter and joy, now felt heavy with anxiety. As they settled in for the night, Emily felt a sense of resilience growing within her. She glanced at David, who was reassuring Ethan, tucking him into a blanket and whispering that everything would be all right. The sight filled her with gratitude, knowing she had a partner willing to stand by her side no matter the storm. "I'm scared," Ethan admitted, his small voice breaking the silence. Emily pulled him close, kissing the top of his head. "It's okay to be scared, sweetheart. We're facing something difficult, but remember, you're not alone. We'll protect each other." As the night wore on, they tried to distract themselves with games and stories, but sleep eluded them. Hours slipped by, filled with whispered conversations and shared fears. Emily took turns checking the windows and the doors, ensuring they were secure while trying to suppress the anxiety clawing at her insides. At last, as the first light of dawn began to creep through the trees, Emily finally found a moment of peace. The cabin was quiet and her family was safe, huddled together in the dim morning light. She felt a sense of determination settle over her, and she vowed that she wouldn't allow Marcus to control her life any longer. As they sat around the breakfast table, sharing toast and eggs, Ethan beamed up at them. "Can we go fishing again today? I want to catch a bigger fish." David chuckled, ruffling Ethan's hair. "Absolutely. But we'll stay close to the shore, all right? We'll keep an eye out for any trouble." Emily smiled at her son, feeling a swell of pride. "And remember, we're all together. No matter what happens, we face it as a family." The day passed in a blur of activity. They fished, swam, and played games on the shore, determined to make the most of their time despite the lurking fear. Emily felt stronger with each moment they spent together, the bonds of their family growing deeper. But as night fell once again, Emily's heart raced at the thought of what could come. They lit a fire, casting flickering shadows against the cabin walls, and sat close, sharing stories of resilience and bravery. It felt empowering, reinforcing their unity against any potential threat. Just as they began to relax, the sound of twigs snapping outside shattered the moment. Emily's heart raced, and she exchanged a glance with David. The familiar fear gripped her once again, but she knew they had to stand strong. "Stay here," David whispered, rising to his feet and slowly making his way to the door. "I'll check it out." "No, David. Let's call the police again," Emily urged, her voice urgent. David nodded, glancing back at her as he reached for the doorknob. "Just a quick look. I'll be right back." As he stepped outside, the darkness swallowed him, and the shadows seemed to stretch into eternity. Emily's breath hitched as she waited, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to believe that they would be okay, but the gnawing fear clawed at her insides. Moments stretched into what felt like hours, and finally David returned, his expression grave. "I didn't see anyone, but we need to be careful. There's a strange car parked nearby, and I think we should report it." Before Emily could respond, her phone rang again. She snatched it up, her pulse quickening as she answered. "Hello? Emily." Marcus's voice dripped with malice. "Did you really think you could escape me? I'm coming for you." The call cut off, leaving her breathless. Panic surged through her, and she could feel the walls closing in. "David," she screamed, her voice echoing through the cabin. "He knows we're here." David sprang into action, grabbing Ethan and ushering him into a corner of the room, his protective instincts kicking in.